Hey, Tim. Welcome to Ann Arbor. It's been a while since you've been here, right?
Hey, thanks, Shelby. It's great to see you in person. Although I'm feeling a little bit guilty here because I know that you're about 6'4" and I'm 5'2". So, these phone books are really helping me keep at eye level with you. I appreciate that.
No problem, Tim.
It's nice to see you in person, though. First time back in Ann Arbor for both of us together since before the pandemic. So it's hard to believe, but here we are.
Yeah, our first live stream in person as well. And we're here actually at the NOAA Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab on the south side of Ann Arbor. And this is where NOAA has a big research facility. It also houses University of Michigan's Cooperative Institute of Great Lakes Research, as well as a lot of other centers such as the Coast Watch Node in the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes Oil Spill Center. It is brand new. So we're really excited to be here and get to talk about some of the work that's going on with some partners.
Well, thanks for sharing. I've been here several times, but I've actually never really known what happens in this building. I just come in, I go to our meetings, and then I leave. So I'm glad to know that there's a lot of great work that happens in GLERL, I think, as people around here affectionately call it.
They do, yeah. It's one of the better acronyms in the world of acronyms. So, Tim, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we've got lots to talk about. I don't know where we'll see if we can cram it in to our allotted time, but we've got a pretty packed agenda. So we're going to talk about what's happening in the winter, which is now, and it's minus 18 degrees Celsius, which is super cold in Fahrenheit. It's super cold in Celsius too, but I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. And outside, so it's definitely wintertime. So we're going to talk about what's happening in the winter on the Great Lakes and in Seagull. We're also going to be talking about an exciting project that we have. We've got Greg Dick, the director of Seagull, who's with us today. We've also got Peter Alsop, who's ecological data analyst with GLERL, and he's with us today as well to talk about his experiences with Seagull. And then we'll also, of course, share with you what's going on with Seagull and what you've got to look forward to in the coming months. I think that's about it. Have you got anything else we're going to talk about?
No, that sounds like a pretty solid agenda. And as a reminder, before we get started, when you have a question or a comment from whatever platform you're watching on, you can enter in the comment and it will come into our streaming service and we'll be able to answer them and respond in real time, thanks to our behind the scenes camera manager, David Fitch.
Hi. He's our producer. Okay, well, let's talk about winter. I mean, what's been going on out there on the Great Lakes, Shelby?
So the big thing is ice. Lots and lots of ice getting developed as we are entering this cold spell finally after kind of a mild start to our winter. So there's a lot of great resources out there to view ice development. One of the ones that we recommend is Coast Watch. You can go on to GLERL's website, glero.noaa.gov, and look for Coast Watch and be able to pull up that information. And we also mentioned that in our latest newsletter if you happen to subscribe to that. And then there's one remaining buoy out there still. So,
is there?
Yep, one of the little smart moorings is out there in it's spot 1275 in Lake Michigan on the east side. And it's going to be out there as long as it lasts this winter is the goal. So we're pretty excited to see what it does and how it survives. So
wow. So if I was a Michigander, and would I hold up my hand and say it's over here somewhere?
That's exactly how you would do it, Tim. Yes, thank you. Yeah, my Michigan hand is holding the mic, so I can't.
Well, that's great. So if someone wanted to find out data from that buoy, all they would need to do is they go to Seagull and they do a search for spot 1275.
Yep.
Do a search for spot 1275, and they'll get that SOFAR Ocean Smart Mooring Spotter Buoy and find out what's going on in Lake Michigan.
Yep, it's the Point Betsy one that's ran by the Sleeping Bear Surf and Kayak Shop, actually. So big shout out to them for being great partners. And then as for the rest of the buoys, they're hopefully hunkered down for the winter in some warmer than outside temperature space, or at least the instruments should be hopefully getting maintained and calibrated and any updates that need to happen. And getting ready to go back out into their respective locations in the spring or summer whenever there's a chance to get out there. So Yeah, Seagull's a little bit quiet in terms of real-time data, with the exception of that one buoy and a lot of met stations around the area. But other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing some more data come out in the spring.
Now, and also, if I understand correctly, we've had a lot of our users ask us about data in the Great Lakes over the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is GLOS looking to do something to try and increase our coverage of data over the winter months?
That is a goal of ours, yes. So looking
Fantastic.
forward to being able to say more about that soon.
Stay tuned on that.
Yes. So tell me, what's going on in your world in Seagull over the winter months?
Well, just because it's cold outside doesn't mean it's not hot in here, and it's been hot with our development partners, Finance and Dig, and of course our own GLOS development team. So we've had a lot of activity. David, have you got some of the slide shots ready to go? Fantastic. So we've been doing a ton of work on Seagull. One of them is some of these work, as we've explained this in the past, we have our front end and our back end. And our front end is kind of like a car. It's the polish, it's the knobs and the buttons and what you see. And then the back end is like the engine and the infrastructure behind Seagull. So a lot of the work has been happening on both sides. We've recently introduced something called unit preferences for those of you who are registered users, and it's a free account. Go to seagull.glos.org and you can create yourself a free Seagull account, become a registered user, and then you can set your own unit preferences. So if you're like me, who lives in the Great White North, maybe you prefer things in centigrade. If you are more familiar with Fahrenheit or imperial units, then you can set your unit preferences there. All right, we've also added, and you mentioned the Sleeping Bear Dunes Surf Shop. I might not have the name quite right, but sponsor logos. So this is organizations who help crowdfund or sponsor directly for the observation platforms that we have in the Great Lakes. And so we've added that in the lower right corner. You can see on this screenshot of an example of a sponsored logo embedded right in Seagull now. And these are clickable links, I believe, which take you right to the sponsor page. Something else that we've been working on, so you see on this slide, better and consistent messaging. So sometimes we have problems, maybe there's a buoy that's not transmitting data, or there's a problem with the buoy, and our iconography that we were using to communicate that, or some of the language that we were using wasn't as clear as it could have been. So what ended up happening was a lot of users would use the orange Seagull bar to give us feedback, and they would say, hey, what's going on with this buoy or platform? Now we've got that feedback directly, that information for you directly in the app, and you can see that through some of our iconography that we've improved. And not just on desktop, but this is on mobile as well. Okay, gliders and drifters. So gliders are fantastic pieces of equipment. They go under the water. They're sort of like a torpedo-shaped instrument. They are uncrewed, which means no humans go on them. They're too small for that anyway. Plus, no one could really hold their breath that long. And they go under the water and they collect a lot of interesting data, of course. And then when they resurface, they transmit that data. They're difficult to track, of course, because when they're underwater, it's hard to know exactly where they are. So we can only predict their measurements through some special instrumentation that's on board. But when they do come up, then we can get a fix on their position. And we're just about to add that into Seagull, and you can see on the slide kind of what it's going to look like. And what about drifters, Shelby? I mean, aren't these groups of people that sort of roam from town to town?
Not quite. They're actually surface uncrewed systems that float. So they use the surface currents to drift around at the free will of wherever the water takes it.
Wherever the water takes it. Okay, so I think what you're getting at then is that all of our platforms, for the most part, they're fixed. They're anchored to the bottom of the lake, right. And so they have approximately a fixed position, which is why the green dot on Seagull doesn't move that much throughout the course of the field seasons. But these gliders and drifters, you're going to see their track as they move in the Great Lakes, and then we'll be able to visualize that on Seagull. I think the next slide will also show you some of the data that it's not just the physical location of these assets or the platforms that we're tracking and visualizing on Seagull, but it's also the super rich data that they're going to be communicating back. And this is just an example of some interesting profile graph data coming off of one of these platforms. Okay, this has been a huge request from our users of pinning parameters. What does that mean? That means the ability to sort of favorite or to, just like you would on a website or a tweet or anything else that you use in your digital experience, where you can pin a parameter in Seagull. You set that in your user settings, and then that parameter or that sensor that you're interested in will always be at the top of your tooltip or your snapshot. Some of the other stuff we're working on, this is just another example in a snapshot of pinning parameters. Another big request we had from our users is parameter comparisons, both across platforms, which is the next slide, but this slide is parameter comparisons within the sensors that are on the assets themselves. So that's coming to Seagull, and the next slide we can show you what it's going to look like when you're comparing those parameters across different assets. So this has been a huge ask from our users, and something that we were able to do on our older platform, GL buoys, which is no longer around. All right, so as you all know, Seagull is optimized not just for desktop, but the mobile experience as well. And so we've made a number of changes on our mobile portrayal of Seagull. And this is to answer, once again, specific user requests. We hit that orange feedback bar right inside Seagull and gave us this feedback. Was, wouldn't it be better if we could just see the list of assets a little bit better, if we could have slightly better, easier ways to understand and digest this rapid access to information that Seagull gives us. So we've made those changes and they're rolling out in the coming months as well. All right. What's next on our agenda?
You forgot the design award.
I forgot the design award. All right. Well, why don't you share? Tell us about it.
We won a design award for Seagull. Not we, but one of our design partners was able to. They go to a conference. I don't know fully the details. Obviously, I'm surprised I'm doing this.
Okay. All right, I put Shelby on the spot. It didn't work out. All right, so one of our development partners, Dig, it's a software development and creative company based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And our development partner, Dig, who helped us with the human-centered design of Seagull, which was so important as we went into this program. And you can see the logo that we've got up on the screen now. Dig, as with our partnership, we developed Seagull to be a very easy to use experience. So easy that my mom could use it without any training whatsoever. And it was entered into an international design competition, award competition, and Seagull took home a silver medal in the web application and mobile application development category. So we're very excited about that. It's a huge accomplishment, not just for GLOS and for Seagull, but also for the IU's program, Integrated Ocean Observing System, as a whole, to better understand and communicate what we can easily do with this type of technology for end users.
Thanks, Tim. I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't, actually. I tried. Anyway, so we were talking about some of the developments of the Seagull earlier, and I'm curious if there's going to be any new data to take advantage of that in the coming months and hopefully years.
We are. So we're always adding new data into Seagull. We've got a number of different, we call them ingestion pipelines. This is more back-end work that I was talking about. And one project that we have coming up is with Seagull, Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research, which is a joint project between University of Michigan and here at Laurel. And we have the director of that program, Greg Dick, with us today to talk about omics data in Seagull and what they're doing with it.
Yeah, so Greg is also a professor at the University of Michigan and researcher and the director of the Cooperative Institute. So let's get Greg online and talk about his omics.
We're getting some audio feedback, so I'm going to swap over this one.
Thanks, everyone, for giving us that feedback. These are cute little guys.
Everybody online, are you still getting the feedback issues?
Sounds like we're still getting the feedback, David. Could you try again? Try speaking again there, Shelby.
Test. What if we don't use a mic?
All right, how's that?
It's fine now. It's fine now. Yeah, with the microphone.
All right, I'll just flip this around and you guys can talk to Greg.
Great, and reminder, as we're going through and talking to both Greg and our next guest, Peter, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. So
All right. Well, Greg, it's great to have you here. Thanks. It's a virtual presence, but we're nonetheless we're thrilled to have you here with us. We've been embarking on this project with you, and many of our users or people who are online are probably thinking, well, Tim said something about omics data. Like, is he talking regonomics, economics, freakonomics, ergonomics? Like, can you explain that to all of us, myself included, what you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah, and maybe before I get to the jargony term, the omics term, I'll just say that, really what we're working on with the Gloss team, with you guys integrating into Seagull is I think about it as information about biological molecules in the lakes, right? And I see this as a whole new way of observing and monitoring the life in the lakes, right? So instead of going out and taking samples and looking under the microscope or towing a net and counting the fish or other critters that we find, what we can do now is take a sample of lake water and analyze the biological molecules that are in there and say something about what organisms are in that sample, and maybe even how those organisms are experiencing their environment. Like, what stresses are they feeling from temperature or pollutants? So yeah, so the jargon, when we talk about biological molecules, we're talking about things like DNA and RNA and protein. So we're literally sequencing the DNA of the Great Lakes. Sounds pretty cool, I hope. And so this tells us what genes are there, what organisms are there, and then the RNA can tell us which of those genes are expressed or turned on. And so it's not, Tim, it's not freakonomics or the other omics that you mentioned. We're talking about like genomics, right? Is the one that most people have heard of. And omics is just a more general term. We have genomics, we have transcriptomics for all of the RNA, genomics for all of the DNA, and proteomics for all the protein. And taken together, this data really tells us a lot about the organisms that are living in the Great Lakes.
Thank you for that easily understood explanation. It was helpful for me and hopefully helpful to our viewers as well. So tell us, Greg, what is your group doing with Gloss in terms of a Seagull integration or project?
Yeah, so we're starting sort of what I'm thinking of as a pilot phase of getting this omics data into Seagull. And in the long run, we're really thinking about this data as providing information about all organisms. So viruses, bacteria, algae, even animals. So when animals swim around in the lakes, they leave all sorts of molecules behind. The waste that they excrete, they're sloughing off tissues and skin, and so they leave traces of themselves behind. But for now, we're really focused on harmful algal blooms. So we're going to start with a pilot to integrate genetic data on harmful algal blooms, both the species that are there, as well as the genes that encode toxins that these harmful algae produce. And so our vision is to have information that people can tap into about what species are present and what potential for toxin production might be in the Great Lakes. And we're really excited about this because in many cases we can see the genes for the toxins before we can measure the toxins themselves. So you can imagine that this could be an early warning system for these toxic algae blooms in the Great Lakes. And we think that that could be really useful to, hopefully, to Seagull users. And so we're really excited to be partnering with Gloss and integrating this type of data into Seagull.
That's great, thank you. How would, I don't know who an average user would be, but how would an average user then interact with this type of data in Seagull?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Tim, is there such thing as an average user for Seagull? I'm not so sure, but I can give some examples at least of what we're envisioning. But my hope is that there will be, other examples that we can't even imagine right now. But, I'm imagining that there will be folks like drinking water intake managers who might want to see when and where the genes for these algal toxins show up so they can have a heads up right before the toxins themselves show up and prepare accordingly. Again, this would be sort of an early warning system. Same thing with charter boat fishing captains, right? They're taking their customers out and they want to know how things are looking out there, and this type of omics data might be a good early warning for them as well. Where are the toxins? When are they going to show up, etc. So that's the first thing we're integrating into Seagull. In later phases, we hope to add data on DNA from animals, and so examples there might be scientists and managers who are monitoring the appearance and spread of invasive species, right? And that would provide them with valuable information about where these invasive species are. We hear a lot about invasive carp, for example, so that this could provide information on, if carp have gotten into the Great Lakes. And finally, I'm hoping this will be a cool educational tool. I'm hoping that there will be school kids, out there punching in the name of their favorite organism and getting a display on where we've detected DNA. I just think that would be really cool to engage some younger Great Lakes scientists.
That's great. Thanks. What a great way to get young people interested in science and technology early on through an easy to use application for complex but super interesting data that tells a story about this fragile ecology that we have right outside our back door. Well, thanks very much, Greg. I know that we're looking to have some early versions of this appearing later this spring. So stay tuned to Gloss and Seagull for updates on this super exciting project. And thanks so much, Greg, for joining us today on our Seagull live stream.
Thank you, Tim and Shelby. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Well, anybody who knows me and knows our work at Gloss knows that we're trying to make Seagull an information-centric program. And our previous guest, Greg, just talked about how important that information is. But on the behind the scenes, when we talk about building Seagull, we follow a user-centric model or approach to developing Seagull. Everything starts with the user. And I usually rant on about this with our development teams on and on again, but we always need to keep in context of the user. So with us today, we have not just a regular user, but we have a super user. We've got Peter Elson, who's an ecological data analyst at the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab here in Ann Arbor, and he's going to talk to us about his experiences with Seagull.
No, that's fine.
I'm just going to say thanks for having me.
Yeah, very happy you're here, Peter. So tell us a little bit about your work and how you've used Seagull within that capacity.
Okay, so I work with biophysical models of the Great Lakes to understand how the ecosystem works. And one of my main interactions with Seagull has been on this project that we call the Coastal Hypoxia Research Program. Now, this project was focused on understanding the drivers of hypoxia in Lake Erie's Central Basin. And as part of this project, scientists at NOAA GLERL and Seagull developed a forecast model that could predict when hypoxic water was going to upwell near the intakes of drinking water plants. So this model has been I helped to run and maintain this model now, and it kind of serves to be an early warning system for these public water utilities. It's significant to them because hypoxic water usually carries a lot of substances that require it to be treated differently than the normal oxygen level water or normoxic water. And so what we do is we provide this forecast that gives these drinking water managers enough heads up to prepare and adjust for changing water quality. So we serve this data publicly on NOAA GLERL's website. We have a forecast graphics that we put up daily of an nowcast forecast, and this is where we bring in data from Seagull. So we also, in addition to showing the model forecast graphics, which is a map of Lake Erie, color-coded based on predicted dissolved oxygen levels, we also bring in real-time observations consolidated on Seagull from buoys throughout the Central Basin. And these serve two purposes. One is to kind of provide a real-time ground truth to the model, but it also is used in combination with the forecast to support forecast guidance that we could issue and communicate to our stakeholders.
That's really great. I'm glad to hear that. And I know the hypoxic model has been super valuable within the Lake Erie Central Basin and the user. So that's great that you're able to work on that. So within Seagull, what do you think are some of the strengths that you've been able to utilize?
Yeah, I think as someone who works with data a lot, one really, I think, valuable piece of Seagull is its role as a centralization system that kind of forces all these disparate data sets into a common format. When working with data, there's a lot of overhead required just to do that. So having that readily available and then easily accessible with a repeatable formula makes working with data a lot easier. And so because of that, we can maximize our time on other things, and it overall improves, the products that we put out.
Great, I'm glad to hear it. And we also understand that Seagull isn't done yet. We're still developing, and it's not quite perfect, and maybe never will be, but we're gonna try. So where do you see a room for improvement within Seagull for your usage?
Well, another feature I really like about Seagull is the ability to visualize data really quickly. And so I'll sometimes look at time series of dissolved oxygen or temperature at certain buoys. But I often think it'd be really helpful to be able to compare time series of certain parameters at different stations on one graph. That gives a better understanding of what's going on more broadly in the lake. And I think that would be a helpful addition.
Awesome, thank you so much. And remember, if you have any questions for Peter or Greg, please drop them in the comments. And thanks so much, Peter, for your time with us. And you're welcome to stay and hang out while we finish off the end of this live stream.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So what are the next steps in terms of growing Seagull, Tim? We're talking about these new developments. We need to get more users.
Well, we've got great plans for Seagull, as you know, Shelby. We have, in case you're wondering, we have a 5-year roadmap that we are fairly consistently tracking against. And that involves a range of things, starting at the very beginning of Seagull, which was building some early prototypes and doing some research, and then releasing our beta versions, which some of you may remember from 2021. And then finally, our live version that we launched last April of 2022. Since then, we've been very fortunate to grow over 100,000 visitors to the platform and over, nearly 1,200 registered users on Seagull. This is for a free account. We're not going to spam you or anything. The reason that we encourage you to create an account on Seagull is so that you can configure your own experience. That's where things like adding, customizing your favorite parameters, the unit preferences. Maybe you have a username that you want to add. You can add favorites to your profile. You can also select notifications based on parameters and thresholds that are met for individual sensors or platforms that can be delivered via SMS to your phone or email. There's a wide range of other personalized configurations that are coming to the Seagull account. However, growth plans for 2023 is we want to hit over 10,000 registered users by the end of the 2023 field season. We also would like to have over 1 million visitors come to Seagull and experience it for themselves. So that's some of our big growth plans. So how can you help? You can help by using Seagull and by telling your colleagues and your family and your friends, even your mom, even my mom, to come and use Seagull. And then this is such a critical part of Seagull, is then that orange bar that's right in Seagull, right at the very top. We call it the Seagull feedback bar because it makes it super easy to give us direct feedback. And as a result of that feedback, we had over 200 pieces of feedback come in within the first 2 months of Seagull, which prompted us to address dozens and dozens of bugs and enhancements and new feature development because of information and feedback that we got from our users. That's how important it is. So the other thing that we're going to be doing over the next field season or 2023 is releasing a ton of new features. Now I mentioned some that were already in the pipeline right now, but other new features that are coming is new data sets. Greg talked about that with some of the omics data. HF radar is a special type of sensor. You can read about that on the gloss.org website. We've implemented one up in the Mackinac Straits area. We'll bring that data on board, data from glider and drifting buoys, and other data sets and new models coming to Seagull as well. So we've got lots of new features coming to Seagull in the coming months.
Yeah, and we plan to keep you informed of the happenings. We're going to be doing regular live stream events the first Wednesday of every month. The time will vary depending on who we're talking to and what we're trying to share. And we're also planning an in-person live stream at IAGLR in Toronto in May. So if you're around, we will be there and look forward to hopefully talking with some of you of the users.
You can talk to us in person because we'll be having our Great Lakes Observing System GLOSS annual meeting on Monday, May the 8th in Toronto at the Hilton Hotel. So everyone is welcome to join us, and we'll also be having a Seagull workshop right after, which you're also welcome to join us.
Excellent.
All right, well, with that, I think that's it. Thanks, Shelby, for joining me, and it's a pleasure to be here with you in
This
person.
was great. A little more chaotic, but a little more fun as well. Not bad about it. So if there's no questions or anything, you can always reach out to us, support@gloss.org. And other than that, we hope that you check out Seagull and give us some feedback if you need to.
All right, thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.